He tried to bribe a royal guard. What happened next silenced the entire plaza. He waved a thick envelope in the air. Crisp 100-pound notes poked out the top like it was a stage prop. Then, without blinking, he leaned in and asked the unthinkable, "How much to blink, soldier?" The plaza around Buckingham Palace fell strangely quiet. A few tourists chuckled nervously. Others lifted their phones, sensing something was off. Leon Barrett wasn't some reckless teenager pulling a prank. He was 41, CEO of a tech security firm based in Houston, private jet, custom-tailored suit, the kind of man who made headlines for buying companies before lunch. But today, he wasn't here for business. He was here for payback. 12 years earlier, Leon had washed out of British military officer training, a painful truth he rarely spoke about. Lack of discipline, the report had said, unfit for combat protocol. Since then, he built a fortune, trained in private combat academies, and told himself over and over that the men who rejected him were nothing more than dress-up soldiers in red coats. So now here he stood, back in London, facing down one of them, camera crews rolling, live stream on, wallet open. 20,000 if you say a single word, he added, voice louder this time. 50 if you take a selfie with me. Royal Guard didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even seem to register the man inches from his face. A boy in the crowd whispered to his father, "Why isn't he saying anything?" The father replied, "Because that man doesn't understand who he's talking to." Leon stepped even closer, too close. He tapped the butt of his envelope against the guard's chest, as if it were a joke, as if the uniform was just for show. But nearby, someone else had started moving. Not a guard, not a tourist, not a man with a camera. He wore a plain charcoal suit, silver hair, and a gaze so still it seemed carved from stone. He wasn't laughing, he wasn't impressed. And within 60 seconds, Leon would no longer be standing. Now take a breath and stay close. This is no prank. This is what happens when ego meets discipline and money tries to buy the wrong kind of silence. Leon's grin stretched wide. He turned to the crowd and raised both hands, like a magician before the trick. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "you are about to witness something no one else has dared attempt, a royal guard breaking character for cash." A few people chuckled. Some booed. Most watched in silence, unsure if this was some elaborate street performance or something worse. The camera crew he'd hired earlier, a pair of young freelancers, zoomed in nervously. They hadn't signed up for this. They thought they were shooting a corporate promo, not a stunt at Buckingham Palace. Leon didn't care. "I've seen men break under half this pressure," he said, circling the guard. "Discipline, loyalty, whatever they call it, everything has a price." The guard stood motionless, scarlet tunic, polished buttons, rifle by his side, eyes forward, a living statue. To most, it was just a performance, but to those who knew, it was a test. And today, Leon had turned that test into a spectacle. He leaned close, whispering in the guard's ear, "You're not special. I've trained with better men, men who actually move." Still nothing. But 20 feet behind him, the man in the charcoal suit had paused. He wasn't watching the guard. He was watching Leon. He tapped twice on his wrist, not to check the time, to signal someone. Leon turned back to the crowd, emboldened by the attention. £50,000, last offer. Just give me a blink, a nod, anything. He waved the envelope again. This time he let it touch the guard's chin, lightly but deliberately. A collective gasp. An elderly woman in the front row whispered to her husband, "He touched him, that's assault." The husband didn't respond. His eyes were fixed not on Leon, but on the man in the suit now speaking quietly into a concealed mic at his lapel. Behind the gate, 2 palace security officers had begun walking, deliberate, measured, alert. Leon hadn't noticed. He was too busy soaking in the attention. "No one's untouchable," he said, laughing. "Not even the Queen's toy soldiers." But that line, that very line, would be the last thing he said before everything changed. Up next, a single hand on his shoulder, a voice he didn't recognize, and the quiet, controlled takedown that silenced everyone watching. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just a hand, firm, gloved, placed deliberately on Leon's right shoulder, the side opposite the camera. He turned instinctively, already half laughing. "Look, pal, if you're gonna ask for a cut," but the words caught in his throat, because the man standing beside him wasn't a tourist, Wasn't a staff member, wasn't even wearing a badge. He wore that same charcoal suit, no tie, no smile, and his eyes weren't angry, they were calculating. "Step away from the guard," the man said calmly. "Now." Leon scoffed. "Who are you, Palace Rent-A-Cop?" No answer, just a subtle tilt of the man's head, and three more figures began moving through the crowd, all dressed like civilians, all headed toward Leon. Still, the businessman stood his ground. "What is this, some kind of intimidation act? I didn't break the law, I made an offer, it's called free enterprise." The man in the suit gave the faintest shake of his head, then reached into his breast pocket. No gun, no badge, just a thin black card, embossed with a crest Leon didn't recognize, but others did. One man in the crowd whispered, "Sis, that's intelligence." Leon blinked, his cockiness flickering for the first time. "You've got to be kidding me. You're standing within 6 feet of an active ceremonial guard of the royal household." The man said, "You made contact, you issued a financial offer, and you reached for his weapon." "I didn't touch the gun," Leon began. "Intent is documented," the agent replied. "And from this moment forward, your words are being recorded as part of an active inquiry." Leon looked around, suddenly aware that the laughter had stopped. The cameras were still rolling, but no one was entertained anymore. The moment had shifted from show to protocol. "This is insane," Leon said, backing up. "You can't just..." The man took a single step forward. "Mr. Barrett, this isn't America. You are not in control, and if you resist further, we will treat this as an attempt to compromise the Queen's Guard, which, under Section 5 of the Royal Protection Act, allows immediate detainment." Leon froze. He looked at the guard, still unmoving. He looked at the agent, absolutely still. Two statues, but only one of them was about to move. What happened next wasn't on any script, and Leon wouldn't walk away from it. Leon did what most powerful men do when they feel powerless. He made it worse. "You think I'm scared of a guy who just stands still all day? I've fought trained fighters, ex-special forces. I'm not impressed." The agent didn't blink. "Mr. Barrett, you've made your point, now walk away." But Leon was unraveling. He looked past the agent, back toward the royal guard, as if the silence of that still figure mocked him. "You think he could take me?" The agent didn't answer. That silence, somehow louder than anything. So Leon made his move. He stepped around the agent fast, too fast. And with the same overconfidence that had made him a millionaire, he lifted a single arm and jabbed toward the guard's shoulder. It wasn't a punch. Not quite. More of a prod. A challenge. But it was a mistake. Because in that split second, before anyone could shout, before security could intervene, before the live stream lagged to catch up, the guard moved. Not like a performer, not like someone in costume, like a trained combatant. In one fluid motion, the rifle was gripped with both hands, not raised, not swung, but angled down and away, clearing his own body line. His right boot stepped back, his shoulder lowered, and Leon's arm, the one still mid-jab, was suddenly trapped in a controlled joint lock that dropped him to his knees with mechanical efficiency. The crowd gasped. Phones dropped. Gasps turned to silence. The guard never spoke, never yelled, never glanced at the cameras. Just applied enough pressure to immobilize, not injure. The agent stepped beside them, calm, unhurried. "You've just physically engaged an on-duty member of the Queen's Guard," he said to Leon. "Congratulations, you've escalated this to an international offense." Leon groaned, trying to twist free. But the more he moved, the tighter the hold became, until his breath came in short, stunned gasps. "Get off me," he choked. "I didn't hit him." "You didn't have to," the agent replied. "He had all the authority he needed the moment you crossed the line." The cameras kept rolling, but the mood had changed. This wasn't a stunt anymore. It was a cautionary tale playing out live. What Leon didn't know yet was that the man holding him down had led raids in Helmand Province. And this was the easy part. The guard's grip didn't shake. His expression didn't change. And though the cameras now swarmed closer, emboldened by the silence, he didn't acknowledge them, because this wasn't a performance. This was protocol. The rifle was already slung back. His free hand pinned Leon's elbow in a clean, low-profile control hold that pressed him to the cobblestone. It looked effortless, because it was. You don't train this move for the cameras. You train it in the desert, in alleys, in places where hesitation costs lives. Leon struggled again, more out of ego than pain. But the guard adjusted his stance without a word. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't showy, it was precise. And behind that precision was history. This was not a random soldier picked for his chin and posture. This was Corporal Thomas Wynne, 2nd Battalion Coldstream Guards, 3 tours, IED clearance, 1 Bronze Cross awarded privately, 1 near-fatal ambush survived in Kandahar province, where, according to classified reports, he held his team together after their commander was hit. Now he stood beneath the tourist sun, decorated, silent, and being live-streamed by people who thought they understood strength. The agent looked down at Leon, then back at the tourists. "You came for a show," he said softly, "but what you're seeing is the result of real discipline. The kind that doesn't need an audience." One reporter, an independent journalist, had recognized the insignia on the guard's sleeve. She lowered her phone and whispered to a colleague, "That's a Tier 2 badge, special assignment." Leon groaned under his breath. He was just standing there. "Yes," the agent replied, "because he was trained to stand where it matters, even when bullets are flying." One of the tourists began to applaud, then another. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, just honest. Wynne didn't react. He was waiting for a command, not attention. The agent pulled out his phone and gave a short nod. Moments later, 2 uniformed officers from Palace security approached, calm, deliberate, professional. One of them looked to the guard. "You may release, Corporal." Wynne let go instantly, no gesture, no victory, just mission complete. Leon crumpled forward onto all fours, coughing. His suit was scuffed, his ego shredded, and he hadn't even seen the worst part yet, because the camera had caught everything from 6 angles, and the internet had already begun its judgment. By the time Leon Barrett stood up, the headlines were already writing themselves. "American businessman assaults Royal Guard, gets silenced in seconds from boardroom to cobblestone. The fall of Leon LBO Barrett, stillness vs. swagger, guess who won?" His face twisted in shock. His body pinned like a rookie. His legacy unraveling in real time. Somewhere in a cafe not far from the palace, a group of students were already splicing the footage into TikToks. One overlaid dramatic text. He called IT just a costume. Another simply looped the moment the guard moved, cut to black, then flashed the words, 3 seconds of truth. Across the ocean, the clip made headlines on US morning shows. Pundits debated it. Ex-military personnel weighed in. That guard wasn't just standing there, he was waiting, and when the moment came, he moved like someone who's seen real war. Leon tried to spin it, of course. That night, his PR team released a short statement. "Mr. Barrett deeply regrets the misunderstanding at Buckingham Palace. He meant no harm and respects the men and women of the British military." But the internet wasn't buying it, because the footage didn't lie. One freeze frame, where Corporal Wynne stared straight ahead as Leon postured inches from his face, went viral. Captioned, "Discipline. When you've faced real danger, clowns don't faze you." In less than 12 hours, Leon lost 2 major brand partnerships. One dropped him publicly. "We believe in honoring service, not mocking it. Mr. Barrett no longer represents our values." Meanwhile, military forums lit up with commentary. Soldiers from the UK, US, Canada, and beyond shared their thoughts. Some angry, some proud, but most simply said the same thing. They forget the uniform isn't the job, it's the reminder. That night back in his hotel, Leon sat in silence, phone off, laptop closed, and for the first time in years, no followers, no cheers, no cameras, just one memory looping in his mind, a man who didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't need to speak, because he already knew something Leon had just begun to learn: respect is earned quietly, but when tested, it speaks louder than any crowd. 2 days later, Leon Barrett stood alone in the palace security office. No cameras, no team, just the sound of a ticking wall clock and his own thoughts. He'd requested the meeting. Surprisingly, it had been granted. A quiet knock. The door opened, and in stepped Corporal Thomas Wynne, this time in standard military fatigues. No bearskin cap, no ceremonial rifle, just the man exactly as he was. Leon stood up, instinctively smoothing his jacket, but the usual confidence wasn't there. Thanks for coming," Win nodded, didn't sit, didn't speak. "I wanted to apologize," Leon said. "Face to face, without PR, no cameras, just me. Still no reaction. I thought I was making a point," he continued. That standing still meant weakness. That stillness was for show. He shook his head, voice quiet. "But the way you moved, I've never seen anything like it." Win finally spoke, calm, even. "You weren't supposed to." Leon looked up. "What do you mean?" "If you see us move," Win said simply, "it means someone made a very bad decision." Silence. Leon chuckled, but it wasn't mocking. It was the sound of a man finally humbled. "Yeah, that checks out." He sat back down. "You know, I've fought some of the best trained fighters in the world. Octagon champions. Black belts with more discipline than most monks. But in that moment," he glanced at Win, "I felt like a schoolboy." Win finally stepped forward. "Your mistake wasn't in testing me," he said. "It was in assuming the uniform meant I wasn't dangerous." He paused. "We're not trained to perform. We're trained to endure, to outlast, to finish the mission." Leon nodded slowly. "I've spent my life chasing applause, likes, followers, victory speeches." He looked up again. "But you didn't need any of that." Win's eyes didn't soften, but there was understanding. "The hardest fights," he said, "are the ones nobody sees, the ones that happen in silence, in stillness." And for the first time, Leon finally understood why the guard never blinked. Because when you've seen real chaos, stillness is the ultimate strength. A week later, tourists once again filled the plaza outside Buckingham Palace. Phones in hand, maps folded in their back pockets, children on shoulders waiting for the changing of the guard. Ceremony resumed as it always had, but something was different. The atmosphere had shifted subtly yet undeniably. There was more distance, more respect, and in some cases even reverence. At his post, Corporal Thomas Wynne stood motionless in full ceremonial uniform. Scarlet tunic crisp, rifle shouldered, eyes forward. And yet, some in the crowd knew now this wasn't just for show. A teenage boy leaned toward his father. "Is that the guy?" His father nodded. "The one who dropped the millionaire." The boy raised his phone but didn't press record. He just looked, and then put the phone away. On the opposite side of the courtyard, a man stood near the barrier, dressed simply this time. No cameras, no designer glasses. Leon Barrett. He didn't make a scene, didn't speak. He just stood in the shade, hands in pockets, watching. And when Wynn's eyes, still fixed forward, subtly shifted just a millimeter in his direction, Leon gave a respectful nod. Not for forgiveness, not for recognition, but for understanding. And then he left. Later that evening, Corporal Wynne returned to quarters. Another day complete. Another shift served in silence. But this time, waiting on his bunk was a small envelope. Inside, a note. "Stillness isn't weakness. It's control. It's earned. I understand that now. LB." Wynne folded the note carefully, slid it into a drawer where other small items rested. A ribbon from a fallen comrade, a coin from a foreign commander, and a photo of a unit long since deployed elsewhere. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just sat in the quiet, perfectly still, at peace. Because some victories aren't about who falls. They're about who chooses not to rise in anger, but in purpose. And in that stillness is the strength of the guard. If this story made you rethink what strength really looks like, don't forget to subscribe for more untold truths behind Britain's most disciplined men. Leave a comment below. Would you have moved if he attacked you? More powerful stories coming this week, only on Royal Guard.